She was 79 the day she stopped being seen. Not invisible in the way people describe loneliness in poetry. No, this was quieter, colder. The kind of invisibility where people looked straight through her as if she had already left the world, even though her heart still beat stubbornly inside her chest. Her name was Mira. Once that name meant something. Once, it echoed in a small but lively home filled with laughter, the clinking of steel utensils, and the soft hum of evening prayers. Once it was called out with love, with need, with belonging. But now it barely existed. That morning she sat alone on a worn-out wooden bench at the edge of a bus station, clutching a faded cloth bag that held everything she had left in this world. A thin shawl wrapped around her fragile shoulders, though it did little to protect her from the biting wind. People passed by her. Fast, busy, important. No one stopped. No one asked. No one noticed that her hands trembled not just from the cold, but from something deeper. Something breaking. She hadn't eaten since the previous afternoon. But hunger was no longer the worst pain. It was the silence. The kind of silence that grows when the people you gave your entire life to slowly decide they no longer need you. Her son hadn't looked her in the eyes when he said it. Ma, it's better this way. Better. Such a simple word for something so cruel. He had stood near the door, keys in his hand, avoiding her gaze like she was something fragile he didn't want to touch. His wife stood behind him, arms crossed, her expression unreadable but firm. There's not enough space, he had added. Not enough space. In the house she had helped build. With hands that had once bled from carrying bricks. With nights she had stayed awake sewing clothes just to save a few extra rupees. With sacrifices no one remembered anymore. She had nodded. Because what else could she do? Beg? Cry? Remind him of the nights she stayed hungry so he could eat? Remind him how she sold her only gold bangles to pay his school fees? No. Some truths she had learned only make people more uncomfortable. So she simply nodded, packed her few belongings, and walked out. And now here she was. A woman who had lived nearly 8 decades reduced to a stranger on a bench. A stray existence. A forgotten story. A life paused. Hours passed. The sun shifted slowly across the sky, but the cold stayed. She watched families come and go. Children holding their parents' hands tightly. Young couples arguing over small things. Vendors shouting. Buses arriving with a roar and leaving with a cloud of dust. Life moved, but she didn't. At some point a little girl stopped in front of her. Dottie, are you waiting for someone? The girl asked innocently. Mira looked up startled. For a moment she forgot how to respond. Someone. The word felt foreign. She forced a faint smile. No, Beta. Just sitting. The girl tilted her head, confused as if trying to understand how someone could just sit, without a destination. Before she could say anything else, her mother pulled her away. Don't talk to strangers, she whispered sharply. Stranger. Mira felt the word settle inside her chest like a stone. Once she had been someone's entire world. Now she was someone to be avoided. Evening began to fall. The temperature dropped further, and the station slowly emptied. Shadows stretched long across the ground. And with them, something inside Mira began to crack. Because as long as there was noise, movement, people, she could pretend she was just resting. But now there was nothing left to distract her from the truth. She had nowhere to go. No home. No family. No plan. Just a body that had lived too long, and a heart that didn't know how to stop hoping. Her fingers tightened around the cloth bag in her lap. Inside it were a few clothes, an old photograph, and something else. Something she hadn't looked at in years. She hesitated. Then slowly, carefully she opened the bag and took it out. A small, sealed envelope. Yellowed with age. Edges worn. But still intact. Her name was written on it. In handwriting she would recognize even if she had gone blind. Her mother's handwriting. Her breath caught. It had been given to her decades ago. On a night she had almost forgotten. A night filled with urgency, and fear, and words that didn't make sense at the time. Don't open this until you have no one left, her mother had said. Mira had laughed back then. Because the idea of having no one felt impossible. She had a husband. A child. A home. A future. How could someone like her ever be alone? So she never opened it. She tucked it away. Forgot about it. Life became busy. Years passed. People changed. Love faded. And now she sat on a cold bench, with nothing left. Her hands trembled as she held the envelope. For a moment she thought about putting it back. Because opening it would mean accepting something she wasn't ready to face. That her mother had been right. That this moment, this exact moment, had always been waiting for her. But then, what else did she have left to lose? She slowly slid her finger under the seal. It resisted at first, as if even time itself didn't want this letter to be opened. But eventually, it gave way. The paper inside was fragile. Carefully folded. She unfolded it with shaking hands. Her eyes struggled to focus in the dim light, but she leaned closer, reading each word as if her life depended on it. Because maybe it did. My dearest Mira, if you are reading this, it means life has taken away everything you once believed would stay forever. And for that, I'm sorry. But listen to me carefully. You are not as alone as you think. Her breath hitched. A strange feeling crept into her chest. Hope. Dangerous, fragile, unfamiliar hope. She continued reading. There is something I never told you. Something I kept hidden not because I didn't trust you, but because I wanted you to live your life without depending on it. Behind our old house, beyond the neem tree, there is a path no one notices. Follow it. Walk until you reach the broken stone wall. There you will find a small wooden door. It will not look like much, but it is yours. It has always been yours. Mira froze. Her heart began to pound. A wooden door? A path? This made no sense. Her mother had never mentioned anything like this before. Was it a memory distorted by time? A story meant to comfort her? Was it real? Her eyes moved faster now, desperate to reach the end. Inside you will find what I could not give you in life. Not just shelter, but truth, and a chance to begin again. Do not be afraid. You are stronger than you believe. And remember, even when the world forgets you, you are never truly alone. Ma. The letter slipped slightly in her hands. Her mind raced. The bus station around her faded into the background. All she could hear was the sound of her own heartbeat. The house. It had been sold years ago. After her husband passed away. She had never gone back. Never wanted to. Too many memories. Too much pain. But if this letter was true, then something had been waiting for her all this time. Hidden. Silent. Patient. Just like her. She looked around. The station was nearly empty now. Dark. Cold. Lonely. Exactly like the future she had been silently accepting just moments ago. But now there was a choice. Stay here. And slowly disappear. Or go back. To a place she had buried in her past. A place that might hold nothing. Or everything. Her grip tightened around the letter. For the first time in a long time, her eyes didn't look empty. They looked alive. Fear was still there. But alongside it, something else had returned. A reason to move. Slowly, painfully she stood up. Her legs protested. Her body resisted. But her heart pushed her forward. She picked up her bag, wrapped the shawl tighter around herself, and took a step, then another, leaving behind the bench, the silence, the version of herself that had almost given up. She didn't know what she would find. She didn't know if the letter was real or just a forgotten dream. But for the first time in years, Mira wasn't waiting anymore. She was going. And somewhere deep inside her, a quiet voice whispered, "This is not the end of your story." She walked slowly at first, as if every step needed permission from a body that had grown used to staying still. The road outside the bus station stretched into darkness, lit only by scattered streetlights that flickered like uncertain thoughts. The world had quieted down, but Mira's mind had not. It was louder than it had been in years. The letter. Every word echoed inside her. A path. A broken wall. A wooden door. It sounded unreal, almost like a story told to a child. And yet, something about it felt certain. Her mother had never been a woman of empty words. She said something existed, it did. Still doubt crept in. What if the house was gone? What if the land had changed? What if everything her mother described had disappeared, just like everything else in her life? Her steps slowed. For a brief moment she almost turned back. Back to the bench. Back to the quiet acceptance of a life that had already taken everything from her. But then she remembered her son's voice. "There's not enough space." The words hit her again, sharper this time. And suddenly, going back didn't feel like safety anymore. It felt like surrender. So she kept walking. The journey was longer than she expected. She didn't have money for a proper ride, so she walked as far as she could, stopping occasionally to rest, asking strangers for directions in a voice so soft it almost disappeared before reaching them. Some ignored her. Some gave hurried answers. One man looked at her with suspicion, as if an old woman asking for directions was something to be cautious about. But she kept going. Because now there was something pulling her forward. By the time she reached the outskirts of the place she once called home, the sky had begun to lighten slightly. A faint hint of dawn. Her legs ached. Her back burned. But she didn't stop. Because there it was. The road. The same narrow road she had walked hundreds of times in her youth. It looked smaller now. Or maybe she had just grown heavier with memories. Her breath became uneven. Not from the walk, but from what this place carried. Laughter. Arguments. Festivals. Loss. She could almost hear echoes of her younger self, calling out from another time. For a moment she stood still, frozen between past and present. Then slowly, she moved forward. Not just hope. Something deeper. Something unfinished. The house appeared. Or rather, what was left of it. Her chest tightened. It wasn't the same. The walls were cracked. The paint had faded into something unrecognizable. The courtyard where she once dried clothes and watched her son play was now covered in dust and neglect. Someone else had lived here. And then left. just like everyone else in her life. A bitter smile touched her lips. Of course, she whispered to herself. Why had she expected anything different? Time doesn't preserve memories. It erases them. She hadn't come all this way to stand at the gate. Her fingers trembled as she pushed it open. It creaked loudly as if protesting her return. Step by step, she entered the space that had once been her entire world. The air felt heavy, like it had been waiting. She looked around slowly, searching for something, anything, that matched the letter. Behind the house, beyond the neem tree, her eyes moved instinctively to the side of the courtyard. And there it was, the neem tree, older, thicker, but unmistakably the same. Her breath caught. The letter wasn't wrong. At least, not yet. Her heartbeat quickened. A strange mix of fear and excitement filled her chest. What if this was real? What if something had truly been hidden here all along? She walked toward the tree. Each step felt heavier than the last. Not because of her body, but because of the possibility. Behind the tree, the ground was uneven, slightly overgrown with weeds. At first glance, there was nothing. Just dirt. Silence. Disappointment began to creep in. Had she misunderstood? Was this all just... Then she saw it. A faint line. Almost invisible. A narrow path. So subtle that anyone rushing past would never notice it. But she wasn't rushing. Not anymore. Slowly she stepped onto it. The air felt different here. Quieter. As if the world itself didn't fully exist in this space. The path twisted slightly, leading her away from the house, deeper into an area she had never paid attention to before. Her heart pounded louder with every step. She didn't know what she expected to find. But she knew something was there. Something waiting. After a few minutes she saw it. The broken stone wall. Exactly as the letter described. Time had worn it down. Parts of it had collapsed. But it stood, just enough to be recognized. Her breath became shallow. This is real, she whispered. Her hand shook. Not from weakness, but from the weight of the moment. The wall was real. Then the door. Her eyes scanned the structure desperately. Searching. Hoping. Fearing. And then, there. Partially hidden behind overgrown vines. A small wooden door. Weathered. Almost blending into the wall itself. Anyone else would have missed it. Anyone else would have walked past without a second glance. But not her. Not today. Tears filled her eyes before she even realized it. Her mother hadn't lied. All these years. All this time. Something had been waiting for her. Right here. She took a step closer. Then another. Until she stood directly in front of it. Her reflection didn't exist here. No mirror. No glass. But if it had, she wouldn't have recognized herself. Because the woman standing here was not the same one who had sat on that bench. That woman had been empty. This one was on the edge of something. Her hand slowly lifted toward the door. But just before touching it, she stopped. Fear. Sudden. Sure. What if opening this changed everything? What if there was nothing inside? What if this hope, this fragile, impossible hope, broke the moment she stepped through? Her fingers hovered in the air, shaking. For a long moment, she did nothing. Just stood there, caught between two worlds. The one she knew, and the one she was about to enter. Then, quietly, almost like a whisper to herself, she said, I have already lost everything. And with that, she pushed the door open. It didn't creak. It didn't resist. It opened easily, as if it had been waiting. Inside, darkness greeted her. Soft, though. Not empty, just unseen. She hesitated for only a second before stepping in. The air was different here. Cool. Calm. Safe. Behind her, the world she knew felt distant. Like something she had already left behind. Her eyes slowly adjusted. Shapes began to form. A small room. Simple. But not abandoned. No dust. No decay. As if time had somehow forgotten this place. In the center of the room, there was something. A wooden table. And on it, a box. Her breath stopped. Every instinct told her this was it. This was what the letter meant. This was what her mother had left behind. Slowly, carefully, she walked toward it. Each step echoing softly in the silence. Until she stood right in front of the box. Her hands trembled as she reached out. This was the moment. The answer. The truth. Everything that had been hidden from her for decades. Her fingers touched the lid. Cold. Real. And with a deep, unsteady breath, she began to open it. Her fingers paused on the edge of the lid, as if her body wanted one last moment before the truth revealed itself. Then, slowly she lifted it. The wood made a soft, almost respectful sound, like it understood the weight of what it carried. Inside there was no gold. No jewelry. No stacks of money like desperate hopes might imagine. For a brief second, her heart sank. But then she looked closer. And everything changed. There were papers. Carefully arranged. Tied together with an old cotton thread. And on top of them, another letter. Her breath caught again. Her mother's handwriting. Once more. But this time the ink looked slightly darker, less faded. As if this letter had been written later. More deliberately. More urgently. Mira's hands trembled as she picked it up. A strange feeling settled in her chest. Not disappointment. Not relief. Something deeper. Something waiting to be understood. She unfolded the letter slowly, almost afraid of what it might say. Her eyes moved across the page. My Mira, if you are here, then you did not give up. And that means I was right about you. Her lips parted slightly. A tear rolled down her cheek before she even realized it. Right about her? No one had said that in years. She kept reading. What you see in this box may not look like much at first, but it is not meant to impress the world. It is meant to protect you from it. Her brows furrowed slightly. Protect her? Oh. Her eyes dropped lower. These papers are not ordinary. They belong to you. And they always have. Her fingers tightened around the letter. A quiet confusion began to build. What papers? She glanced down at the bundle tied beneath. Something inside her chest started to beat faster again. Not fear this time. Anticipation. She returned to the letter. I never told you this because I wanted you to build your life with love, not dependence. But I also knew life is not always kind. People change. Even those we trust the most. Her throat tightened. Her son's face flashed in her mind. His voice. His distance. His indifference. Her grip on the letter grew firmer. That house you lived in, it was never truly yours. It was in your husband's name. And after I saw how things were changing, I made a decision. Mira's heart skipped. A decision? What decision? Her eyes raced now. I sold a piece of land that belonged to me. Quietly. Without telling anyone. Not even you. Shock spread through her like a sudden wave. Sold land? Her mother? But what? What I received from that land. I used to create this. A place. A backup. A truth no one could take from you. Mira's breathing became uneven. Her hands shook more noticeably now. You see, my child, love is beautiful. But it is not always permanent. And I could not bear the thought of you one day standing alone, with nothing. A sob rose in her throat. Uncontrolled. Raw. Because that was exactly where she had been. Alone. With nothing. And so, I made sure that would never truly happen. Her vision blurred with tears. But she forced herself to keep reading. In that bundle are the legal papers. This place, the land, everything connected to it, is in your name. The world seemed to stop. Completely. Silently. Her mind struggled to catch up with what her eyes had just read. In her name? No, that couldn't be right. Her hands moved instinctively, dropping the letter onto the table as she reached for the tied bundle. Her fingers fumbled with the thread, struggling to untie it. It slipped once, twice, then finally loosened. The papers fell open. Official. Stamp. Signed. Her name. Repeated again and again. Clear. Undeniable. Mira. Owner. Holder. Authority. Her breath hitched violently. This is, she whispered, but the words refused to form. Her knees weakened. She had to grip the edge of the table to steady herself. All this time. All these years. When she thought she had nothing. She had something. Something real. Something powerful. Something no one had told her. Tears began to fall faster now. Not soft tears. Not quiet sadness. This was something else. A release. A breaking open of everything she had held inside. She looked back at the letter with trembling hands and picked it up again. There is also something else in that box, it continued. Something more important than the papers. Her heart pounded again. More? There was more? Her eyes moved quickly. Underneath the documents, you will find a small cloth pouch. Her hands immediately went back to the box. She lifted the papers gently. And there it was. A small, faded pouch. Simple. Light. But somehow, it felt heavier than everything else. She picked it up slowly. Her fingers brushed against the fabric. Soft. Warm. Familiar. For a moment she just held it. Because something inside her already knew. She opened it. And the moment she saw what was inside, she broke. Completely. A pair of old gold bangles. Her bangles. The same ones she had sold years ago. The same ones she had cried over quietly at night, telling herself it was worth it, because her son needed an education, a future, a life. She had let them go without ever expecting to see them again. But here they were. Waiting. Preserved. Her mother had bought them back. Saved them. Kept them. For this exact moment. A sound escaped her throat, somewhere between a sob and a laugh. She pressed the bangles against her chest as if they were alive. As if they could feel her. As if they had come back to tell her something she had forgotten. You gave everything, the silence seemed to whisper. But you were never empty. She sank to the floor. Right there, in that quiet room that had waited decades for her. Crying like she hadn't cried in years. Not just for the pain, but for the truth. Her mother had seen this coming. Every betrayal. Every loss. Every moment where Mira would question her worth. And she had answered it, years before it even happened. Not with words, but with action, with protection, with love that stretched beyond time. After what felt like forever, Mira slowly wiped her tears. Her breathing steadied. Her hands still trembled, but not from weakness anymore. Something had changed. Deep inside. The woman who had sat on that bench. The one who believed she had been left with nothing. She didn't exist anymore. Because this was not nothing. This was a second life. A truth. A foundation. A choice. Her eyes moved around the room again. But now she wasn't seeing it as a stranger. She was seeing it as something else. Something she hadn't felt in a long time. Her own. Slowly she stood up. The bangles still in her hand. The papers safe on the table. The letter held close to her heart. And for the first time in years, her back straightened. Not because she forced it, but because something inside her had lifted. She wasn't abandoned. She wasn't forgotten. She wasn't nothing. She had been prepared. Protected. Loved, in a way she had never fully understood until now. A quiet smile appeared on her face. Soft, but real. Because now, the story wasn't about what she had lost. It was about what she had just found. And this time, no one could take it away. She didn't leave the room immediately. For a long time, Mira simply stood there, holding the bangles in her hands, feeling their weight, their warmth, their history. It was strange how something so small could carry an entire lifetime inside it. Her mother's presence lingered in the air. Not as a memory, but as something alive. Something that had reached across years just to hold her when no one else did. Mira slowly slid the bangles onto her wrists. They fit perfectly. As if time had paused just for them. As if they had been waiting for her return, just as patiently as everything else in this place. She looked down at her hands. Wrinkled. Fragile. But no longer empty. A deep breath escaped her chest. And with it, something heavy left her. Not all the pain. Not all the memories. But the weight of believing she had nothing. That was gone now. The sky outside had brightened. Morning had fully arrived. Soft sunlight filtered through the small opening of the wooden door, touching the floor like a quiet invitation. Mira turned toward it. For a moment she hesitated again. Not out of fear this time, but because stepping out meant facing the world again. The same world that had ignored her. The same people who had walked past her. The same son who had chosen convenience over connection. Nothing out there had changed. But she had. And that made all the difference. She picked up the papers carefully, folding them back together with respect, placing them inside her bag. The letter, she kept in her hand. Close. Where it belonged. Then slowly she walked toward the door and stepped outside. The air felt different now. It wasn't warmer. It wasn't softer. But it felt lighter. Or maybe it was just her. She walked back along the narrow path, her steps more steady this time. More certain. When she passed the broken wall, she paused, turning back for a brief second, looking at the small door hidden behind the vines. A quiet promise formed inside her. I will come back, she whispered. Not as someone lost, but as someone who belongs. Then she turned and continued walking. When she reached the courtyard again, she noticed something she hadn't seen before. Or maybe, something she hadn't allowed herself to see. The space wasn't just broken. It was empty. And empty spaces can be filled. Her eyes moved slowly across the ground. The cracked walls. The silent corners. And instead of pain, she felt possibility. A place to sit. A place to rest. A place to begin again. Her lips curved slightly. A small thought entered her mind. What if? It was fragile. But it was there. The sound of footsteps interrupted her thoughts. Mira turned. A man stood near the gate. Middle-aged. Curious. Cautious. He looked at her like he was trying to place her in a memory. Excuse me, who are you? He asked. His tone wasn't rude. Just uncertain. Mira straightened slightly. A few hours ago that question would have broken her. She wouldn't have known how to answer. But now she did. She took a small step forward. Her voice was soft, but steady. I am Mira, she said. The man frowned slightly, still trying to understand. I used to live here, a long time ago. Recognition flickered faintly in his eyes. Ah, this house was sold years back, he said. No one stays here now. Mira nodded. I know. There was a pause. A moment where the past and present stood face to face. Then the man asked, Are you looking for something? Mira glanced briefly toward the back of the house. Toward the hidden place no one else knew about. Then she looked back at him. And this time, her answer carried something new. No, she said gently. I already found it. The man looked confused, but didn't question further. He simply nodded and stepped back, giving her space. And for the first time, someone stepping away didn't feel like rejection. It felt like respect. She walked out of the gate slowly. But she didn't go far. Just a few steps. Then she stopped, turning around one last time, looking at the house. Not as something she had lost, but as something that was still part of her story. Something unfinished. Something waiting. Her fingers lightly touched the bangles on her wrist. A quiet strength moved through her. Then, without overthinking, without doubting, she made a decision. She would not go back to that bus station. She would not disappear quietly into the corners of the world. She had a place now. She had truth. She had something her younger self never realized she would need. And more than that, she had herself. The next few days were not easy. Strength doesn't erase struggle. It just changes how you face it. She found temporary help through a nearby tea stall owner who allowed her to sit and rest, offering her warm chai without too many questions. She cleaned parts of the old house slowly, one corner at a time, sweeping dust, clearing broken pieces, letting sunlight enter spaces that had been dark for years. Her body ached constantly. Her hands grew sore. But every small change, every little improvement, felt like reclaiming something. Not just a place, but her dignity. One evening, as she sat in the courtyard catching her breath, she noticed the same little girl from the bus station standing near the gate. The same curious eyes. The same innocent presence. Mira blinked in surprise. The girl smiled shyly. "Dottie, you live here?" she asked. Mira looked around. At the walls. At the ground she had cleaned. At the space that was slowly becoming something again. Then she looked back at the girl. And this time, there was no hesitation. "Yes," she said softly. "I do." The girl stepped inside, looking around with wonder. "It's nice," she said. Simple words. But they carried warmth. Acceptance. Something Mira hadn't felt from a stranger in a long time. She smiled. A real smile. One that reached her eyes. That night, as Mira lay down on a thin mattress inside the house, staring up at the ceiling, she realized something she hadn't understood before. Life hadn't ended for her. It had just stripped everything away, until only the truth remained. And the truth was this: she was never meant to disappear. She was meant to rebuild. Not for others. Not to prove anything. But because she still could. Her fingers gently touched the letter beside her. Her mother's words echoed softly in her mind. "You are stronger than you believe." For the first time, she believed it. And in the quiet darkness of that night, Mira didn't feel abandoned. She didn't feel forgotten. She didn't feel invisible. She felt something far more powerful. She felt found. Days turned into weeks, and something quiet but undeniable began to change. Not just in the house, but in Mira. At first, her routine was simple. Wake up with the sun, sweep the courtyard, clean one small corner, rest, then continue again. It was slow work. Painfully slow. Her body often protested, reminding her of every year she had lived. But she no longer saw her age as a limitation. It was proof. Proof that she had survived everything that was meant to break her. And now she was still here. Still standing. Still building. Word began to spread. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just in the soft, natural way things travel in small places. Someone has come back to that old house. An old woman is fixing it. She says it's hers. People were curious. Some stopped by the gate, peeking in. Some asked questions. Some just watched from a distance. Mira noticed them. Of course she did. But she didn't feel uncomfortable anymore. She didn't shrink under their gaze. Because she wasn't asking for their approval. She was simply living. One afternoon, the same middle-aged man returned. This time he didn't stand at a distance. He walked in slowly, looking around at the visible changes. "You've done a lot in a short time," he said. Mira wiped her hands on the edge of her sari and gave a small nod. "Just cleaning," she replied. The man looked around again. Then back at her. "If you need help, I can send someone." "A worker," he offered. There was no pity in his voice. No hidden judgment. Just a simple offer. Mira paused. A few weeks ago she might have refused instantly. Out of habit. Out of fear. Out of not wanting to owe anyone anything. But now, she understood something she hadn't before. Accepting help didn't make you weak. It meant you were allowing life to move forward. She gave a small smile. "I will manage," she said gently. "But thank you." The man nodded, respecting her answer. Before leaving, he said something unexpected. "My name is Raghav." Mira looked at him for a moment. Then replied, "Mira?" Not as an introduction, but as a confirmation. A presence. He smiled slightly and left. That evening, as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in soft orange and gold, Mira sat in the courtyard, her back resting against the wall. The little girl came again. This time she didn't hesitate at the gate. She walked in like she belonged there. "I brought you something," she said, holding out a small steel tiffin. Mira looked surprised. "For me?" The girl nodded eagerly. "Ma made extra food." Mira hesitated. Not because she didn't want it, but because something inside her still wasn't used to receiving. The girl noticed. "Please take it," she insisted softly. Mira slowly reached out and accepted it. "Thank you," she said, her voice carrying more emotion than she intended. The girl sat down beside her, swinging her legs. "What's your name?" Mira asked. "Anya," the girl replied. Mira repeated it softly. Anya. It felt warm. Familiar. Like something new beginning quietly. Days passed and Anya kept coming. Sometimes with food. Sometimes just to talk. Sometimes just to sit. And without realizing it, Mira began to wait for her. Not with desperation. Not with loneliness. But with a gentle expectation. Like the kind that brings peace instead of pain. One morning, as Mira was arranging a small corner inside the house, she found herself looking at the space differently again. Not just as a place to live, but as something more. A thought returned. The same one from before. What if? This time it didn't feel fragile. It felt possible. She looked around. At the empty areas. At the quiet walls. At the space that could hold more than just her. Children. Voices. Stories. Warmth. Her heart beat a little faster. Not out of fear, but out of purpose. That afternoon, when Anya arrived, Mira asked her something unexpected. Do you study? She said. Anya nodded. Yes, but I don't like it much, she admitted honestly. Mira smiled slightly. Bring your books tomorrow, she said. Anya's eyes widened. Why? I will teach you. The girl looked unsure at first, then curious. Okay, she said slowly. The next day Anya came with her books. They sat in the courtyard, under the open sky, and Mira began. Her voice was calm, patient, clear. Years of forgotten knowledge slowly found their way back to the surface. At first, Anya struggled to focus. She fidgeted, got distracted, asked random questions. But Mira didn't get irritated. She didn't rush. She simply continued. And something beautiful began to happen. Anya started listening. Really listening. A few days later, another child appeared at the gate. Then another. And then more. Curious. Drawn by something they couldn't explain. Maybe it was Anya talking about the Dottie who teaches nicely. Maybe it was the quiet energy of the place. Or maybe it was something deeper. Something that had been waiting to grow. Soon, the courtyard wasn't quiet anymore. It was filled with soft voices. Laughter. Questions. Mistakes. Learning. Life. Mira would sit in the center, surrounded by children of different ages, teaching them in the simplest way she knew. No pressure. No harshness. Just understanding. And slowly, very slowly, the same people who once looked at her with curiosity began to look at her with respect. One evening Raghav returned again. But this time he wasn't alone. He stood at the gate watching the scene in front of him. Children sitting in a circle. Books open. Mira explaining something with quiet focus. There was a softness in his expression. Something like realization. After the children left, he walked in. You've turned this place into something, he said. Mira looked around. At the courtyard. At the marks of small feet on the ground. At the faint echoes of laughter still hanging in the air. She smiled. It was always something, she replied. I just came back to it. Raghav nodded slowly. Then said, if you ever want to expand this, I can help. This time Mira didn't answer immediately. She looked at him. Then at the space around her. Then at her hands. The same hands that once built a life for others. The same hands that were now building something again. But this time, it was different. This time, it was hers. A soft but certain voice came from within her. Not fear. Not doubt. Clarity. She looked back at him. And for the first time, she didn't just sound steady. She sounded strong. Yes, she said. Maybe it's time. That night, as she sat alone under the open sky, Mira looked up at the stars. Her fingers gently touched the bangles again. A quiet smile rested on her lips. Because now she understood something she hadn't before. Losing everything was not the end. Sometimes, it was the beginning of finally finding what was always meant for you. And somewhere in the silence of the night, it felt like her mother already knew that. The next morning felt different before it even began. There was no sudden miracle, no dramatic change in the sky, no sign from the universe announcing that something big was about to happen. And yet, Mira felt it. A quiet shift. The kind that doesn't ask for attention but changes everything anyway. She woke up before sunrise as she always did now, but instead of going straight to her routine, she sat still for a moment on the edge of her bedding. Her eyes moved slowly across the room. The same walls. The same floor. The same small space. But it didn't feel small anymore. It felt like a beginning. By mid-morning, the courtyard was alive again. Children gathered, some with books, some just curious, some simply drawn to the warmth they felt there without understanding why. Anya sat closest to Mira as always. Focused. Comfortable. At home. Mira noticed how naturally the children had started treating the place like it belonged to them too. They laughed freely. They argued over small things. They helped each other without being told. And something inside her chest tightened, but not painfully. It was something softer. Fuller. This wasn't just a place anymore. It was becoming a space where something was growing. Something real. Later that afternoon Raghav returned. But this time he didn't come alone. Two other men stood with him, both carrying notebooks, their eyes scanning the area with interest. Mira noticed immediately. She stood up slowly as they approached. Raghav gave a small nod. "I hope you don't mind," he said. "I told them about what you're doing here." Mira glanced at the men. There was curiosity in their faces, but also something else. Possibility. "This is just small," she said quietly. "I am only teaching them what I can." One of the men smiled. "That's how everything starts," he replied. The other added, "We work with a local group. We help set up informal learning spaces, especially where children don't have proper access." Mira listened carefully. Every word felt important. Raghav stepped slightly closer. "If you're willing, we can help make this bigger. Proper seating, materials, maybe even a small structure here." Her heart began to beat faster, not out of fear, but out of the weight of the moment. Because this was no longer just about survival. This was about stepping into something larger than herself. Her eyes moved around the courtyard again. She imagined it. More children, better space, more learning, more life. But along with that came a quiet question. Was she ready? Not physically, not practically, but inside. Was she ready to hold something this meaningful again? Her fingers instinctively touched the bangles. And just like every time before, they grounded her, reminded her, "You have already carried more than this. You can carry this too." She looked back at them. And this time, there was no hesitation in her voice. "Yes," she said. Things didn't change overnight, but they started changing steadily. A few wooden benches appeared first. Simple, but enough. Then a small board. More books. Children who had once wandered in out of curiosity now came with purpose. And those who had never stepped into any kind of learning space before, slowly found their place here. Parents began to notice too. At first they stood at a distance watching, whispering, observing. But over time something shifted. They started trusting. Because they saw something they hadn't expected. Consistency, care, respect. One evening a woman approached Mira directly. She held a young boy's hand tightly. "He doesn't listen anywhere," she said almost apologetically. "But he wants to come here." Mira looked at the boy. Restless eyes, uncertain posture, a spark of defiance. She had seen that before. Not in him. In life. She smiled gently. "Let him sit," she said. The woman hesitated. "He will disturb." Mira shook her head softly. "Let him come." The boy stepped forward slowly, testing, watching, waiting to be pushed away. But Mira didn't push him. She simply made space. And that changed everything. Days turned into something more organized. There was still no formal structure. No strict rules. But there was rhythm. Morning cleaning. Afternoon learning. Evening quiet. And within that rhythm, something powerful took root. Mira was no longer just living day to day. She was building something that would exist beyond her. Something that didn't depend on who stayed or who left. Something steady. Something real. One late afternoon, as the sun dipped low again, painting the courtyard in warm light, Anya sat beside Mira, unusually quiet. Mira noticed. "What happened?" she asked softly. Anya looked down at her hands. "My papa said I shouldn't come here too much," she said. Mira's chest tightened slightly. "Why?" she asked gently. Anya shrugged. "He says it's not a real school." Silence settled between them. Not heavy, but thoughtful. Mira didn't react immediately, because she understood something Anya didn't yet. People don't always resist because something is wrong. Sometimes, they resist because it's unfamiliar, because it doesn't fit into what they understand. She placed her hand gently over Anya's. "Do you like coming here?" she asked. Anya nodded quickly. "Yes." Mira smiled. "Then come," she said simply. Anya looked up. "That's it." Mira nodded. "That's enough." The next day Anya came again. And the day after that. And slowly, even her father began to stand at the gate sometimes. Watching. Not interfering. Just observing. And one day, he stepped inside. Weeks later the space looked different. Not perfect. Not polished. But alive. There were more children than Mira had ever imagined. Voices filled the air every day. And for the first time in decades, she wasn't just remembered. She was needed. But not in the way that drains you. In the way that gives back. One evening, after everyone had left, Mira sat alone in the courtyard again. The same place where she had once sat in silence. But now, the silence felt full. Complete. She looked around slowly. At everything that had changed. At everything that had grown. And then her eyes lifted toward the sky. A quiet smile formed. Because now she understood the truth her mother had left behind. Not just in papers. Not just in gold. But in something far more valuable. She hadn't just been given a place to survive. She had been given a chance to matter again. And this time, it wasn't something anyone could take away. Her fingers rested lightly on the bangles. Her breath steady. Her heart full. And in that quiet moment, Mira realized something that would stay with her for the rest of her life. She was never abandoned. She was being prepared. For this. For a life she didn't even know she was meant to live. And now that she had found it, she wasn't just existing anymore. She was finally home. The seasons began to change quietly at first. The harsh dryness of summer softened into cooler evenings, and the air carried a different kind of stillness, one that didn't feel empty anymore but settled. By now, the courtyard had transformed into something no one in the village could ignore. Children didn't just come, they arrived early. Some even waited outside before Mira opened the gate, their small voices filling the morning air with energy she could feel before she even stepped outside. A few parents had started bringing mats. Someone donated a small cupboard. Chalk was no longer scarce. Books, once rare, were now stacked carefully in one corner. Nothing about it was perfect, and yet, everything about it felt right. One morning, as Mira adjusted the edge of her sari and stepped into the courtyard, she noticed something unusual. Anya wasn't sitting in her usual place. Instead, she stood near the entrance, holding something behind her back. Her eyes sparkled with excitement. "Dottie, close your eyes," she said. Mira raised an eyebrow slightly amused. "Why?" she asked. "Just do it," Anya insisted, barely containing her smile. Mira let out a soft breath, then slowly closed her eyes. She heard whispers. Small footsteps. A bit of giggling. Then silence. "Now open," Anya said. When Mira opened her eyes, she froze. In front of her, the children stood in a slightly crooked line, holding a piece of cardboard together. On it, written in uneven but determined handwriting, were the words, "Mira Learning Courtyard." For a moment, she didn't react. Not because it didn't matter, but because it mattered too much. Her eyes moved slowly across each child's face. Hope, pride, love. They were looking at her, like she was something important. Something permanent. Her throat tightened. What is this?" she managed to whisper. Anya stepped forward. "It's the name," she said proudly. "This place needed one." Mira's hands trembled slightly as she reached out, touching the cardboard as if it might disappear. "A name," she repeated softly. All her life she had been part of things that belonged to others. Her husband's home. Her son's future. Her family's needs. But this carried her name. Not as ownership, but as meaning. Later that day Raghav arrived again. He stood at the gate looking at the sign, then at the courtyard filled with children. A slow smile spread across his face. "You didn't just rebuild a house," he said as he walked in. "You built something people believe in." Mira looked at him, then back at the children. Her voice was calm, but there was depth in it now. "I didn't build it alone," she replied. "They did." Raghav nodded. "Still, it started with you." That evening something unexpected happened. A small group of villagers gathered near the gate. Not out of curiosity this time, but with intention. One of the older men stepped forward. "We've been watching," he said. Mira listened quietly. "This place, what you're doing, it matters," he continued. There was a pause. Then he added, "If you agree, we want to help make this permanent." Mira's heart skipped. Permanent. The word echoed deeply inside her. Not temporary. Not fragile. Not something that could disappear overnight. Something that stays. Her eyes instinctively moved to the house. To the courtyard. To the children who had unknowingly become her second life. Then she looked back at them. And slowly, she nodded. Time passed. Not rushed. Not forced. But steady. Walls were repaired. A simple roof was added to one section. The wooden benches increased. More children came. Some left. Many stayed. And through it all, Mira remained at the center. Not as someone controlling it, but as someone holding it together. With patience. With care. With something that couldn't be taught. Only lived. One quiet night, long after everyone had gone, Mira sat alone in the courtyard. The same place where she had once sat surrounded by silence that felt like emptiness. Now the silence felt different. It held echoes. Laughter from earlier. Footsteps. Voices calling, "Dottie." She leaned back slightly, her eyes drifting up to the night sky. The stars were clear. Though unchanged. Her fingers moved gently over the bangles on her wrist. They had become more than just a memory now. They were a reminder. Of everything she had given. And everything that had come back, in a different form. Her thoughts drifted to her mother. To that letter. To the path. To the door. To the moment everything shifted. A soft smile touched her lips. "You knew," she whispered into the night. "You knew I would need this." The wind moved lightly, brushing past her like a quiet answer. She thought about the bench at the bus station. The cold. The silence. The feeling of being unseen. It felt like another lifetime now. A version of her that had almost disappeared. But didn't. Because somewhere, without even realizing it, she had chosen to stand up. To walk. To believe, just enough. And that had been enough to change everything. A faint sound interrupted her thoughts. Footsteps. She turned slightly. It was Anya walking in quietly. You're still awake? Mira asked softly. Anya nodded, coming to sit beside her. I couldn't sleep, she said. Why? Mira asked. Anya looked up at the sky, then back at Mira. Dottie, when you weren't here, what was this place like? Mira paused, thinking, remembering. Then she answered honestly. Empty, she said. Anya tilted her head. And now? Mira looked around, at the space that had become something more than just walls and ground, at the life that filled it every day, at the quiet peace that settled every night. Then she looked at Anya, and smiled. Now, it's full. Anya smiled back, resting her head gently against Mira's arm. And in that simple, silent moment, everything felt complete. Because in the end, Mira didn't just find a hidden place. She didn't just uncover papers or gold or secrets. She found something far greater. She found a reason, a purpose, a life that began at the exact moment she thought it had ended. And that is the truth most people never realize. Sometimes when everything is taken from you, it's not punishment, it's preparation for the life that was always waiting, just beyond the path you were afraid to take. And Mira, the woman who was once invisible, was now something no one could overlook. Not because she demanded attention, but because she became a light, quiet, steady, unshakable. And long after she was gone, that light would remain, in every child who learned there, in every life she touched, in every moment where someone chose to keep going, even when it felt like there was nothing left. Because her story was never about losing everything. It was about discovering that she still had something no one could ever take away, herself.